Okay, friends, the day we've all been waiting for has finally arrived. It's a Small World with Groot is now open at Tokyo Disneyland. I'm going to break down what exactly this overlay is, how this bizarre creation came to be, and where we could see this being in the future. It might be closer to you than you think. I'm Jordan. I've been living in Tokyo for over 5 years and talking about the Tokyo Disney parks every possible chance I get during that time, so I made a YouTube channel to talk about it. Hopefully I can help people with trip planning or just let you learn more about these unique parks. So if that's your sort of thing, please do subscribe to the channel. And if you really enjoy the content, do check out the Patreon where you can get early access and other perks and help me out a ton. A huge thank you to everyone who does that. Okay, so first up, I wanted to talk about where I was at going into this ride, because it's quite different from the perspective that I think a lot of other people have had when they heard that this very strange thing was happening. And I think the best place to start is with the question of why. Why does this exist? Why on earth does the classic Disney attraction, It's a Small World, now have Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy, not even the world, in it? Well, it's pretty clear from a fan perspective that the Disney company have been trying to get Marvel into the Tokyo Disney parks for quite some time. You might think, what do you mean they're trying to get it in? There's a Disneyland. Can't they do what they want? Well, no. Tokyo Disney Resort is actually the only one in the world that's not owned or operated by the Disney company. It's actually a franchise. And if you're thinking, well, like McDonald's is a franchise, right? But individual McDonald's restaurants don't get to choose to have different menus. Well, Tokyo Disney works a little bit differently from that. It's kind of a collaboration between the two. Disney will design things, and then OLC pay to build it and put it up. But there's always a kind of back and forth. And you might think, well, why wouldn't they want Marvel in the parks? Marvel's hugely popular. Not here in Japan, it's not. Out of every country that has a Disney park in it, Japan is by far the least interested in Marvel. But you probably don't need me to tell you that Disney have put quite a lot of money into making Marvel films. And they also have this thing called Disney Plus, where they want people to pay to watch those films. So guess what? Disney would quite like it if people in Japan were more interested in Marvel. And what better way to do that than to put Groot in It's a Small World, I guess. My speculation, and this is speculation, I don't know anything from the inside of Tokyo Disney, but I would suspect that Disney said, look, we want to put Marvel in the parks, we'd really like that, we'll give you some kind of financial incentive, whether that is to do it for free or help to foot some of the bill, I have no idea. But clearly there's some kind of incentive because Tokyo Disney have never done any of this stuff before. And I guess the conversation went something like, oh, how about we put meet and greets in the park and people can meet Spider-Man? No, we don't like that. Okay. Well, what if we put Marvel stuff in the nighttime show? Well, you're getting a new nighttime castle projection show. Well, let's put them in that. Yeah, okay, whatever. Okay, so yeah, Marvel stuff is in Reach for the Stars, which was the first time any Marvel stuff was in Tokyo Disney at all. And then I guess that conversation just kept kind of going, and someone, I can imagine, like, at the end of the meeting, all the kind of business types from Disney and Tokyo Disney side kind of take a big sigh, like, oh, we're really not getting anywhere, are we? There must be a good thing that would work. And some crazy creative person in the corner is like, oh, well, I mean, this is a really silly idea, but what if we put Groot in It's a Small World? And it's like he's traveled here, he's traveled to planet Earth, and he's kind of taking a tour, and he wants to see the different areas of the planet. And somebody liked it. Somebody thought, yeah, that's great, let's do that. And It's a Small World with Groot was born. To an uproarious and thundering... what? Most Disney Parks fans were left very, very confused. Some people kind of angry, which I will say that I can understand to an extent. I could understand when they put Disney characters in the original It's a Small World at Disneyland Park in Anaheim. I mean, we say original, but the original one was at the World's Fair, right? It had to move and things have changed. But anyway, when they put Disney characters in there, that was a huge change. And that was something that fundamentally changed that ride's DNA. A ride that means a lot to a lot of people and has a lot of history. That I could understand getting upset over. Putting Disney characters into the It's a Small World rides in other countries, I can still understand, but to a lesser degree. People were getting so upset about this, like it's ruining Mary Blair's vision. Mary Blair being the Imagineer who oversaw the whole art direction for the project alongside with Rolly Crump. People saying this is a disgrace, and I just don't agree. I don't agree that you can put the same weight on something that's just a temporary overlay. It's here for a few months, and then it'll be gone. And, I mean, maybe we'll see it again in the future. I'll get into where I think it's going to go later on in the video. But I really like a ride overlay. I think it's really fun to go on a ride and things are different. And this is really silly, really out of left field, bizarre, but I'm into that. I think that's pretty cool. And I was quite excited to go and check this ride out and see what's going on. I love a ride. I love a ride overlay. So I was into it. And when I saw the outside of the ride, I thought, wow, they've done nothing. The exterior of the ride looks exactly the same as it normally does, with the exception of one of the two It's a Small World signs having a little with Groot at the side of it. I guess that's not entirely fair because there was one other thing that they changed, but it's not something that you can see. It's something that you hear. And they did a really cool job of using that same kind of It's a Small World sound font, this kind of world fusion, I guess, like different instruments from around the world, but playing Marvel themes and playing the Avengers theme. And that was really cool. And that was something that kind of reinvigorated me after seeing the ride and being like, huh, nothing's changed. Has the inside changed? Did we come on the wrong day? Is it ready? Is it ready to open? When you hear that music, you're like, oh, okay, something's happening. Something's happening. Let's get inside. And then you get inside. And for me, this was the single biggest oversight of the entire thing. I can understand not doing too much to the facade. It's a big facade. I do think it was a missed opportunity. I think a giant Groot face on the clock would have been nice. You know, something silly like that to say, the inside of this ride has totally changed. Come and check it out. But they didn't do that. You know, this thing was probably done on a very small budget, and they definitely chose very carefully and very wisely where to spend that budget. But that's no excuse for this next thing, because It's a Small World is, I think, the only ride at Tokyo Disney that has its ride poster inside the queue. And we have an It's a Small World with Groot ride poster. That was the first thing, the first piece of artwork we ever saw when they made this announcement. But you get inside the queue and you see the normal poster. How does that happen? It really made me think of how Walt Disney back in the day would tell his Imagineers and his staff to go to Disneyland as a guest. Don't use your privilege to skip the queues. Don't come in the back exit or anything. Go in the entrance, queue with the guests, do what the guests do. And this really felt like something where, like, if any Imagineers had got in the queue and walked through the queue and thought about that for any amount of time, someone would have said, oh, hey, let's print the poster and put that here. Bizarre, totally ridiculous oversight, but hey. And the rest of the queue was no different. The ride station, Tokyo Disney's It's a Small World ride station, is really, really cute, and it has this train going around in this hot air balloon. No sign of Groot, no sign of Marvel, nothing at all. So you're queuing, and you really are thinking, like, what's going on? Is this happening? And then you board the boat, and everything changes. Because as soon as you get in the boat and go into the sort of intro area where you have the flat panels of characters and animals and things, you see your first Groot. And then you see your second one. And then we're rocking and rolling and we're going. And of course, the first Groot of the ride, how do you kick this thing off the best way you possibly can? You stick him in a Beefeater's outfit and put him in England, of course. British Groot is our first Groot of the ride, and he really sets the tone for this strange but endearing overlay because, well, just look at him. He's adorable. This animatronic figure is far more articulated than I expected. Not only does he kind of sway back and forth and play the trumpet, his eyes are blinking, and when he blows the horn, out of time and off pitch, by the way, adorable touch, just brilliant. You see his little Beefeater bush on his head moving up and down. A lovely touch. I really expected that there would be like a stock Groot that they've made, and then he'd be in like a few different poses. But no, they've made some actual different moving parts and different figures. It's very, very cool. As we get around the corner, you'll see Alex's favorite. He's my podcast co-host over on Land of the Rising Film podcast. Check that out wherever you listen to podcasts every week. We're talking about Tokyo Disney and news and updates and all that. This was his favorite, and I can totally see why, because not only is Groot adorning a beautiful bushy dress alongside a Dutch farmer with her geese, but he's just loving it. He's so proud of himself. He's just absolutely delighted to be there and wearing what he's wearing. Oh, I just think it's so good. I love that dressing up as the opposite gender wasn't like a punchline. It's just cute. Like, he just looks so happy and is enjoying it so much. I thought it was really, really cool. And at this point, you may be thinking, oh, so it's a small world with Groot, like they've just put Groot in the ride. Well, no, there are other Marvel characters as well, because in the next area, we see Groot gondoling? Being the gondolier of a Venetian gondola. And Rocket Raccoon has decided not only to get himself some ice cream, or gelato, I guess it is, but also to adorn a rocket booster onto the side of the gondola, presumably giving it a much higher top speed than the ones that you can ride on at Tokyo Disney Sea. And from here, the additions really kind of pick up pace. We get into the next area and we see Hercules, the Disney character, because yes, the Disney characters are still here, just alongside Groot. That's another thing we'll talk about later, because that has some interesting implications. But we see Hercules showing off his strength, holding up this pillar, and then you see a giant Hulk figure. And this was really when I was like, oh wow, this isn't just a small thing. They've put a fair bit of money into this. Apparently couldn't afford a poster in the queue, but hey. Hulk is smiling with his shirt on, but also showing off his enormous strength, you know. And then Groot's there next to him trying his best to also hold the thing up. He's adorable. Of course, we couldn't not have a Groot in the Japan area of the ride, with this being at Tokyo Disneyland after all. So we find him there with a couple of his friends, sitting under a sakura tree, enjoying the cherry blossoms in the spring, which is kind of apt because this ride overlay, I mean, it started now in the winter, but will be going through the spring, through to June. They're enjoying a picnic under the cherry blossoms, as people traditionally tend to do during the cherry blossom season. Across the way, we see another one of the larger set pieces, as over in the India area, we can see Groot alongside Doctor Strange and Wang, and they've opened up a portal. And if you look through the portal, there's something quite interesting there, because it's either Venice or it's the Hotel Miracosta at Tokyo Disney Sea. I'll let you decide, but I know which one I think it is. Either way, I'm sure it wasn't an accident, but this is another set piece that's like, oh, that's pretty big, and it lights up and moves and stuff. It's pretty cool. Over in Egypt next, we see Groot holding hands with Kamala, I think Alex said her name was. And he's looking through some binoculars, taking in the sights. Next up on the right, we see Black Panther. I know that one. And Groot being enamored by these glowing flowers. Over on the left next was my personal favorite, where we see Groot with a little Indiana Jones hat on and a giant magnifying glass. And he's showing us Ant-Man and the Wasp riding a giant ant, or I guess a regular-sized ant, and they're tiny, but they're not tiny because they're big, because we're seeing them through a magnifying glass. It was a cool touch. I like this one. Alongside the Argentinian penguins spinning around, we can see Captain America getting dizzy with Groot, spinning around on his shield, which is a cute one. Mexican Groot with maracas is absolutely delightful, and we can see Star-Lord in the back on his jetpack. Again, just the pace at this portion of the ride, it's pretty cool. It's really impressive. The first time we rode it, this was the point in the ride where you're like, oh gosh, we have to ride this again. Like, did you see that one over there? Oh no, I missed that one. Like, you're realizing you can't spot it all in one ride, which, I mean, they say is often the sign of a good ride, right? That you come off it thinking, oh, we have to do that again, this stuff that I missed. This next one being one that I missed the first time and had to re-ride to spot. Because over in the distance by the volcano at the back of this chaotic scene, we can see Captain Marvel flying up with glowing hair, costume. I don't know what it is. I'm sorry. I'm not a Marvel person, okay? I'm a ride person. That's why I'm talking about rides. But Groot is worriedly holding her hand, kind of dangling from the bottom. And this is like flying up and down in the scene, just like Star-Lord did previously. Again, the motion they've added and all these different figures and the way they all move, it's really, really cool. They've put a lot into this. The next one is one that's impossible to miss, and really, if there's any part of the ride where they really did, like, change the feeling of the original ride, this is it, because for the first time ever, you hear electric guitars in It's a Small World playing the theme as Thor summons a giant lightning bolt down to his hammer. That's the point when you kind of remember, like, oh yeah, this is insane. Like, this is a ridiculous overlay that should never have happened. But guess what? I'm having fun. It's a lot of fun. It's at this point that the ride's almost over. We see a delightful Groot playing a little ukulele over to the right-hand side of the boat. And on the left, we see him practicing a didgeridoo with all of his souvenirs that he's gathered. And take a close look at the bags, because not only has he got a Tokyo Disney bag filled with souvenirs from Tokyo Disney Resort, so clearly he came to Tokyo Disney on his travels, which is a lovely, cute detail. But another one that someone's pointed out to me is that the broccoli with sunglasses from, gosh, I can't remember if it's Kitchen Cabaret or Food Rocks, but from a very old animatronic show at Epcot, is also featured on the stickers on his luggage, which is a great little detail. We always love those kinds of nods to past attractions, especially when they're done subtly and nicely like this. And you might be thinking, oh, you sound like you're kind of winding down, but this isn't the end of the ride. There's that whole finale scene where all of the children of all the different countries are united together and accept and embrace their differences whilst also reminding each other that we have more in common than we don't. What about that scene? They must have gone crazy in that one and just filled it up with characters. Well, no. In a interesting choice, this scene has zero Groot in it at all. No Groot, no Marvel characters, nothing. And I realized, something I haven't realized before, there are no Disney characters in this scene either. Well, apart from one Pinocchio being a Pinocchio puppet doll being held by one of the children, but I would file that one under Easter eggs, and, you know, that doesn't count. And when you think about, well, why wouldn't they have put anything in this scene? The only conclusion you can really come to that makes any sense, I mean, if you have your own different one, then write it in the comments, please, because I'd love to know. But surely they view this scene as kind of sacred, and they view this scene as too important. And to the point of the criticism I mentioned at the start of the video that a lot of people had at this very idea, this overlay even existing to begin with, maybe they're being more respectful than you think. However, whilst I do respect that, it does leave this overlay a little bit anticlimactic, because the ride has kind of trained you through the ride to treat it like a bit of a hide and seek thing, for better or worse, right? But that's what it is. You're going through like, oh, there's Groot, and there's Groot, and there's Groot. And then you get to this last scene that's full of movement and figures and all of this stuff going on, but it's like, oh, there's nothing here. You know, it would be like Toy Story Mania's last scene having no targets in it or something, you know? Now, we do get one last little farewell from Groot in the flat scenes at the very, very end of the ride, just as you're going back into the station. So that's a nice little touch. That's a nice little ribbon on the bow. Ribbon on the bow? That's two bows, Jordan. What are you talking about? That's a nice way to tie it in a bow at the end of the ride and say, hey, yes, this was It's a Small World with Groot. Here's Groot saying goodbye. So you'll probably have your own impressions of the ride based on what you just saw, but here are mine. I think it's a very fun, temporary overlay that gives the park a bit of energy. It makes you feel like something's going on. It definitely does enough to call itself an overlay. It feels like a lot of meat to it, which I was surprised by. You know, they don't entirely change the ride like we do for Haunted Mansion Holiday, but they also don't do basically nothing like they do for the level 13 overlay for Tower of Terror at Disney Sea. I'll talk about that in another video at some point. But basically, they just make the ride longer, and there's not even a sign or anything saying that the ride has changed. This feels somewhere in the middle, where it is a considerable change, but for a lot of people, if they don't know Groot, or they don't care, or if they're not locals like me and they're just not familiar with how the ride normally is, they probably won't even notice it. It might sound crazy from what you've seen in this video because we've just been focusing on the changes, but I was really surprised that like 3 of the 4 times we rode this day, the other guests in our boat were saying, "Oh, wow, look, it's Cinderella," or, "Oh, look, it's Peter Pan." They didn't care at all. It was like we had AR goggles on, like the Mario Kart ride, and we were seeing something that no one else was seeing. It was bizarre. So, you know, me talking at the beginning of the video about how this is probably Disney trying to get Marvel to be more popular in Japan, I don't think that's gonna be successful with this. And I think the proof is in the pudding with that one, because if you look at the most popular films on Disney Plus right now, the top one is Wreck-It Ralph. We currently have a Vanellope from Wreck-It Ralph event at Tokyo Disneyland. And the second one is Wreck-It Ralph 2. And Guardians of the Galaxy isn't anywhere to be seen, nor are any Marvel films. So that probably tells you everything you need to know about how successful a ride overlay is at sort of puncturing the cultural zeitgeist compared to a full event with a parade and its own song that people can listen to at home and learn the dance moves at home and blah, blah, blah. But hey, I'll talk all about the Vanellope Palpalooza event in the next video, probably. I want to just finish this video with the question that I posed at the beginning. What's the future of this? Because, you know, I mentioned Haunted Mansion Holiday Nightmare. We see that every single year, and it comes back not like it does in California, where there are small changes. In Tokyo, it comes back exactly the same as it was last year, every single year. Could that be the future of this? Maybe. I think if that's the case, it's not going to run as long as it did this year. This year, it's from January through June, which is almost half of the year. I think that's because it's new. I think if we do this in the future and it does become a regular thing, then it's going to be shorter, maybe 3 months or 4 months at most. However, perhaps a more likely scenario for the future of this is that we don't see it again in Tokyo. Or maybe we do once or twice, but then this feels very much like something you could just take and put in a different park. And yes, I said that Disney don't own and operate Tokyo Disney, but there is a history of Disney buying back, I guess. I don't know the inner workings, nobody does. But buying back these things and using them elsewhere. That's what they did with the Mickey Mouse review show. There were 3 animatronics of the 3 Caballeros, and they took those and put them into the Epcot ride in Mexico. So that's definitely something that can happen, and I could totally see this being a big hit in Hong Kong Disneyland, where they have It's a Small World, and they have Marvel rides in that park, and Marvel is hugely popular in Hong Kong and in China. Shanghai doesn't have It's a Small World, so it couldn't go there. Paris, maybe, but I don't know. I think Hong Kong would be a shoo-in. Maybe we see it in the American parks, but I think this is a little too kooky for that. Let me know what you think in the comments, and check out one of these videos next. YouTube thinks that you'd like them. I think so too.